Welcome back to another episode of Geeks from the Multiverse. We're going to be talking today about parody movies and satire movies. We're going to be breaking them down all the way back to the 70s, 80s, and today. We're going to be talking about our favorite movies, the big players in these movies, and maybe some quotes here and there. And now for something completely different. Huh? What? Yeah. Okay.
No, that was a very interesting, kind of topic. We just were like, what am I saying? Topic? I meant, intro. I don't know why I was saying that. Anyways, Matt, it's going to be an interesting day. I can already tell because I can't even speak and you can't even word your mouth together.
It's the music, I mean, it's just the Monty Python. If you didn't know that was the very original Monty Python music, and it's public domain. I forget what the band that actually played it, but that was their kind of intro, their show intro back in the early 70s.
Well, it's kind of like that. Remember that movie we were talking about? It was during Halloween. Remember that one that was like one of the most famous like Halloween movies, and they basically did not copyright anything, and now basically anyone could do the same thing.
Yeah, that was Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So like now it's like, okay, well, this movie clearly didn't do that either, and so
I think this is when the initial orchestral band played the song. It was like 1800s or something. So
that was 1800s.
The initial, I think it was a military band that initially played this.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So it's a public domain song in how they played it.
Okay.
So the initial recording of it is public domain. So I mean, it's kind of cool, but
yeah,
it's a fun little song. I mean, we only played a little snippet of it, but it is a cool, fun little song. And obviously, Monty Python has their little funny graphics they do. So,
oh yeah, I mean, if you clearly, the thing is though, is like you got to like that British humor. If you don't like that British humor, you're not going to really understand what Monty Python really does. Because like I know growing up, I'll just say it, like with my dad and my brother and whatnot, a lot of what we really watched was the Holy Grail. Right, it was one of the funniest ones.
Grail,
it was one of the best ones I met, in my personal opinion.
It came out in 75.
Right, and the thing is like when you watch it, like I've watched it many of times, and it's like it's kind of like it's almost like if you've ever watched like Blazing Saddles, but like in a more medieval kind of time, and then it's like they kind of do similar things in some ways, but like of course they have their own separate humor in a sense, but like it's just unique in its own way, and like even some of the actors that I would say like later on, depending on like movies you've seen, like you never would have thought, oh wait, these guys were actually in this movie. Like, yeah, like they were actually the original people that were doing all this stuff. And then like you see him in other movies and you're like, holy crap, I didn't realize like, that like correlated and whatnot. But like, it's interesting that, with parody movies that, they really like hype up a lot of things. So for a random example is like, when you look at some of like the modern stuff, so like I always think of like Scary Movie, right? So like you have these like famous actors that come in there, but like in a sense, it's kind of like low budget. It's like usually like a low budget kind of movie, but it's like it's supposed to be funny, it's supposed to be uplifting. But it's just funny like how like some of these actors have been like doing it for years, and they just like throw themselves in there, and it's like, yeah, I just wanted to do a parody, and you're like, you sure that was a wise move there, friend? Like, are you sure that's actually going to make money, or is that going to be like something you just basically just made a horrible mistake? It's like you're trying to watch the Green Lantern movie with Ryan Reynolds. Yikes. That's all I'm going to say.
I think that's where Leslie Nielsen kind of got typecast in, like he, from the Naked Gun movies to Airplane to, all the movies that he's done kind of have been parody or satire movies.
Yeah. And like there hasn't really, like if you think about like a lot of actors, he's probably one of the very few that have done successful in that kind of style of movies, because there's not a lot of people, because like if we're talking about maybe like Mel Brooks, in his style of the way he's, directing it and stuff like that, or, the Wayans brothers, or, some individuals like that. But like, even then, some of the Wayans brothers and whatnot, like they do take serious roles, like they do take other things, but they do a lot of comedy, but it's like, it all really depends on what they do.
Yeah.
But there hasn't been a whole lot of people like, oh, I'm going to, my entire career is literally just based on a parody movie or parodies of different things. So like Leslie Nielsen is one of the very few that have really only done that and haven't like explored other options in a sense. you know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's a huge player in a lot of these movies, and I mean, we'll kind of get to a lot of the ones that he's been in. Um, I mean, getting to some of the ones in the '70s, because Monty Python had at least two.
Well, I feel like parodies probably this is when it was starting. Like this is really the golden era of like parody movies in a sense because there
Right.
was not it's not like it was a genre back in the day. This was like how they were starting to make, those kinds of movies in a sense. So I mean, like really the pioneers, I would say, are your Mel Brooks, are your Mighty Python, players
Right.
in that game and so forth.
Yeah, and the ones that I've listed, at least on our list, John, are the kind of the bigger players. There are a lot of
Oh no,
smaller
yeah,
movies that
right.
were made that were technically considered parody movies, but
We're talking about like more
Blazing Saddles,
popularized.
Young Frankenstein, those Mel Brooks ones that came out in the '70s, and then obviously Monty Python. They did have a show earlier than that.
So like even when you just said Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, like one of the main actors in that was Gene Wilder.
Right.
And he's also a famous, he was a famous actor, and even before that too, but like even later on, like he became a more success. But like it's funny, those movies that you're talking about, it's like he did parody movies, but he still, was a serious actor and still had other roles that
Yeah.
made him, who he was. But it's just interesting to see how, like even in Mighty Python, you have John Cleese and you have like some of the I can't remember all of them, but a lot of the British, actors in that movie were definitely in serious roles down the road. But
Right.
it's just funny how like that's how they kind of started and then, moved to these like bigger roles down the road, because of things like this.
Yeah, and I mean, I do remember watching Life of Brian, but the Holy Grail, I think, was my very first kind of induction into Monty Python because I do remember. I mean, like the stupid coconuts
Oh yeah,
was was one, and I think they do have a conversation of when they show up to the castle, and the guy's like, "Are those coconuts?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's my horse," and he's like, "Those are coconuts." And-
So it's actually funny. Like I'm pretty sure back in the day you could, or actually, I thought you could do this, but you could actually buy like the actual prop of those same exact coconuts, and you can actually reenact it. But I think it's interesting that in the movie, it's like all these like subtle things that you don't really see until like, of course, like when you're in it. But like one of my favorites was the Black Knight. For some reason, right? So he was like. He's like, it's just a flesh wound, and it's like his leg is literally just off, and like he's just jumping on one leg, and he's like,
Yeah.
it's just a flesh wound, and he's like, trying to basically defeat King Arthur, and he's like, I'll bite your arm off, and he's like, basically both of his legs are cut off, and like literally he has like no arms. He's like, come here, I'll bite your arm off, I'll try to defeat you, and you're sitting there like, bro, you're done. Like, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna nod? He's like, what are you gonna nod at me? Like you're gonna. Like kill me because if you're gonna like whatever, I don't know. It's one of those like scenes you have to kind of watch and then like you like look at it again and then I don't know. But it's interesting
Yeah.
that they kind of it's not even just one thing like that's just one part of the story, but like you kind of go into like the Knights Who Say Knee, right, and then you go into like
it's really this, it's the stupidity in it that makes it funny, and I think of like that stupid bunny.
oh the Killer Rabbit.
Yeah, and it's like everybody's like, "Oh, it's so cute. Don't worry about it," and then the next scene later, they're all run away, run away.
Run away! It's the Killer Rabbit, and then they're like, okay, well, how are we going to defeat it? The Holy End Grenade of Antioch. And, like, wait a minute. Like, first of all, how did they get a hand grenade? And then they explained the rules. That was the funniest. And then he was like, 1, 2, 5, 3, sir. 3. And he throws the grenade. And then, of course, like the bunny still doesn't die. So it's like, you're like, well, what was the point of all this shit that they just described? And like, even the, what was it? The European swallow?
Yeah,
Like that little joke, like who's faster? Like it was a European versus like a European, and I think it was like an American swallow. I don't know, something stupid like that. And they're like, it was like, yeah, what's the wind velocity of a European swallow? He's like, is it European or is it something else? He's like, I don't know. And then he like basically the guy who asked the question just gets flown off the bridge, and it's just like, oh, and he just dies to his death, and you're just like, well, I mean, he had an interesting point, and then he just walked on.
yeah.
But I mean, like again, it's all that stupidness, or like even the witch scene, like when they're trying to like figure out
Right.
Anna, she's a witch. You know, and he's like, well, how do you know if she's a witch? Well, if she floats, she's a witch. If she basically, it didn't matter what happened. She was just a witch no matter what.
Yeah.
But it's I guess it's just the philosophy on how they do all the different scenes and how they like. It doesn't. You could literally just jump into the movie at any point, and I guarantee you wouldn't even know what you missed because honestly, you're just watching a bunch of random shit all at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like the genius of it because, even though, you look at Holy Grail and you look at, even that witch scene, it's something that really did exist, but like they're using it in kind of a funny way.
Well, yeah, I mean,
because like some of the things that they're saying, like, oh, she has brown hair, she's a witch. Like
she's a witch.
like it's funny because it's like you could basically say anything and they would just be like,
or I always think of that one scene. It was Dolmaeus Requiem, and then it like takes that what was it, a board, and he just like hits themselves on the head, and it's like you get this other guy who is coming out and he's saying he basically brings like a wheelbarrow out. He's like, bring out your dead, and he comes back and he keeps
I'm
going.
not dead.
Yeah, the old guy, he's like, hey, I got a guy here for you. And he throws him in. He's like, I'm not dead.
Like, yes, you are.
He's like, I feel happy. And then he takes a club and beats him on the head. You're like, what is going on right now? But it's that kind of stuff, whether you look at, Blazing Saddles, Mighty Python, even going into like the 80s and stuff. 80s was kind of more, I don't know, like 70s, you got that random stupidness in a sense, but I feel like the 80s was, it kind of had a story, but like it was just random because like I remember what was it? I don't know if it was Airplane or it was probably or Naked Gun. I don't remember which one it was, but Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was the pilot.
That was Airplane.
Okay, because like it was random.
Airplane is by far like probably my between that one and Spaceballs, like they're my number 1 and 2.
Well, no, but I'm just saying like Kareem, he's like. He's like, hey, kid, or like there's a kid that comes up. He's like, aren't you a basketball player? No, I'm a pilot, man.
He's like, no, I'm a pilot.
And he's sitting there and he's like, yeah, why are you trying to say I'm a basketball player? He's like, well, because you're Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, right? It's just a random shit that they randomly throw in there. But like, and then even Spaceballs. I mean, that was just a giant parody of Star Wars. That's all it literally was. I mean, if you took both and if you haven't seen Star Wars, I mean, well, shame on you at this point. But, if you looked at Spaceballs and you looked at, this movie, yeah, it's almost identical to a degree. But I mean, of course, they have their funny moments and whatnot. But, what was it? Was it a giant magnifying glass when they were like looking through the sand in Spaceballs? Or?
No, they had a comb.
Oh, comb. That's right. Because they comb the desert to find.
Yeah, so they were combing the desert, and they each like there were different teams that were doing it, and like I think the first like 2 or 3 teams like had a normal sized comb.
Yeah, right.
And then there was this. I think they were 2 black guys, and they had like this afro pick of a comb, like a very very small comb, and dark helmet.
Oh, right.
Is asking each one like, "Hey, did you find anything yet?" And he's like, "No." And and they asked the last guy, the last set of guys, and they have the afro pick. He's like, "Did you find anything yet?" And he looks back,
like, "Nah, man,
I ain't found shit."
It's the random shit in that movie.
Yeah, it's like, just, I mean, the movies are like so stupid, and I mean, Airplane is like one of those classic ones, and I think it sets because that one came out in 1980, and I think it really does set the pace for like the rest of the 80s because when you watch it, like there are so many things going on in that movie that are just so funny that you could seriously miss like some of the funny things that are in that movie. And one of the funniest things isn't even a main character, but he's like a kind of a secondary character, and he's one of the controllers, and his name is Johnny.
You talking about Spaceballs?
No, I'm talking Airplane.
Oh, my man.
And he's just one of the funniest characters in the whole movie, where he's a kind of a secondary character. Like whenever there's anything going on, like in the terminal.
Okay.
He's kind of in the airport kind of like headquarter terminal, And there's one scene where the guy hands him a briefing, and he's like, "What can you make out of this?" And he's like, "Oh, a pterodactyl and a and it's just a stupid scene, but it's so funny, and there's just like a whole bunch of scenes with him in it, and it's just so funny. But like, there's so many little things in that movie that, like, you watch Spaceballs, and it's kind of the same thing. Like, it's that level of comedy that there's little things that you can look at that make it, like, it's stupid, but that's what makes it funny.
Oh, of course. That's the whole thing. Is like, I'd say Spaceballs was kind of one of the first ones I feel like it was like a true parody of like making fun of another movie. Like like an actual like major time kind of movie in a sense, you know what I mean? Because like when people are like, "Oh, you've seen Star Wars?" No, I've seen Spaceballs. Like you can say, "Okay, well, yeah,
Yeah.
'cause I don't think there's been many movies that have like really started the trend of like, okay, well, we're gonna have a movie, we're gonna have a popularized movie or whatever, but then we're gonna make fun of that movie on top of that. You know what I'm saying? Because I feel like he
Yeah, I
kinda
do.
started that.
I do know what you're saying. And you have some of these movies, and a lot of the ones, and the main ones in the 80s, like Airplane, History of the World, Part 1, Monty Python, Meaning of Life, Top Secret, Transylvania 6500, Spaceballs, and Naked Gun movies. There's one that came out in 88.
Hmm.
And then the TV show Police Squad, which was 82. But obviously there's more movies that came out. Those are kind of just the main ones that came out. But I think, yeah, between all of those, like, Top Secret is kind of your parody of the, like, spy movies, obviously.
Well, yeah, but
Um,
I'm more like when I was saying about Spaceballs, it was more like directed at a
a particular,
like actual
yeah,
movie that was
yeah.
popular. It's like that's what I'm saying. Like it feels like there hasn't been a lot of movies that have at that time that were doing that in a sense. So I feel like that was kind of like I wouldn't say pioneering of it, but like
Yeah, and I
kind of
think,
segued.
you look at Airplane, and that was kind of, I mean, like 70s, 80s, like more 70s, because this came out in 80, but there were a lot of, like, kind of airplane crash type movies. So this is where, Airplane kind of got its birth of trying to make a comedy movie out of those. Obviously Top Secret is where, your Bond movies and that Top Secret.
I feel like it's interesting though. Like imagine if Leslie Nielsen wasn't that actor that was playing an airplane and Naked Gun and stuff like that. Who would you think that would ever do something like that besides him? You know what I mean? Like that's where I'd be interested to see if it was like an alternate timeline or something like that. Like who would it be? You know what I mean? Like who would take over that kind of funny role? Because you know what I mean? Like
I
it's
don't know if I could imagine anybody else in that role. I mean, it's so iconic for his character.
no, I know, but that's what I'm saying though. Like that's just how he does his acting and everything else. But like I don't think of many people unless you're thinking of more comedians nowadays. That can maybe do it. But even then, I mean, realistically, I'm not gonna lie to you. What they do is that if they ever made an airplane movie like now and they remade everything, they'd probably have like, it'd be like, hey, we're gonna have Kevin Hart. We're just gonna have Kevin Hart in the movie or something stupid like that. Just like throw him in and make it somewhat similar, but not really.
Yeah.
And
I mean, they're doing a new Naked Gun movie, and it's Liam Neeson.
really.
I'm serious. Yeah, they're doing a redo of Naked Gun. I don't know if it's a redo or if they're just doing a new movie. But Liam Neeson is,
Of course, Liam Neeson, the most serious actor you're going to play, the most serious actor that has literally lived, and he's going to play a funny ass role. Okay, well, we're going to see about that. I'm just saying, right?
We'll see. We'll see. I don't know. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, you really have to go back and look at, like, who was in comedy movies at the time in the 80s.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. I mean,
I really couldn't picture like a Rodney Dangerfield. Like, that would be weird.
I mean, well, Rodney, he was funny in his own way, but it was different. Like he wasn't doing a lot of parody movies. He was more doing like his own comedy movies that were just kind of thrown
Right.
together. But like, I don't know. I don't really know. Well, who knows? Maybe it could have been Eddie Murphy. But then again, you're looking at Beverly Hills Cops, and you're looking at those kinds of movies. He was kind of in a serious role. He was a comedian already, at that time.
He was a comedian, but I mean, Leslie Nielsen wasn't I mean, he was a comedic actor, but he wasn't like a comedian,
right? And that's
in the sense of that.
And that's what I'm saying. Like there wasn't. I mean, I don't know. Would you have Bill Cosby? Or somebody. I'm just thinking somebody random.
Would you like a jello pop?
What was that, man?
Probably not an airplane. Probably not. I don't know. I mean, it's not like. I mean, there's not really a lot of people I think I could picture in.
That's what I'm saying. Like if you thought about like
maybe Steve Martin, maybe.
Well, that's true. I mean, he was up and coming at that point.
Martin Short, maybe.
I was there actually. You could be like
Chevy Chase.
I mean, well, he's already. I mean, well, it's funny that you mentioned like National Lampoon, but granted, he was already doing that kind of movies in that sense, but I don't know.
I mean, those guys were bigger then.
Well, what about Bill Murray? Or I'm thinking, there's so many other actors too. But the problem is like if you look at their style, like there's not many that feel like they fit the role of a parody movie, kind of like extraordinaire. Leslie kind of in his own way kind of did all that. I mean, granted, he was a lot older. I didn't realize like he was a lot older when he was doing these movies. Like it's interesting.
I mean, you also have the Dan Aykroyd, and I mean, you have those guys. But again, it's hard to say. I mean, I think Steve Martin probably would have been.
Well, Steve. I mean, it was funny.
The best choice of doing something like that.
I find it interesting though that Steve Martin is, at the time he looked a lot older, but he wasn't. He was actually like, what was he like in his 30s, maybe? At some of those movies at that time, like he wasn't.
Well, when Leslie Nielsen did Airplane, he was 53.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like he was that's why I'm saying about Leslie Nielsen. Like he was a lot older when he was doing a lot of these movies. Where Martin Short at that time, I don't know, I can't really think of when he really started, but like he was kind of in his. I'm pretty sure he was like 30s, and then he started like working later on. But like it's funny though, like a lot of actors, I feel like in that time frame of the 70s and like 90s, in a sense. It's like a lot of the comedic actors and whatnot, they weren't really young. I feel like they started a little bit later, built their kind of, success and then really kind of, jumped into a lot of these movies. Because I feel like a lot of like nowadays, like, shit, think about it. Like when we started watching Marvel, I'm just going to throw it out there, but like you look at Tom Holland, he was a nobody, but he was literally a kid, playing a kid that should have been the right age around that time. But I'm just saying somebody like that, like if you take a kid that literally has nothing, has never done anything, and then make him a big success and so forth, like that's different nowadays. But like back then it was like, yeah, oh, you're 30, 40? All right, cool. We're just going to take you off the street. No problem. You know what I mean? Like it was random. It felt like, they waited until they were older to then like, oh, we're going to throw you into like random shit like that. So Leslie Nielsen starting out in fucking Airplane at 50 something years old, it's like he didn't look like he was in his 50s, personally when I'm looking at him. But like that's what I'm saying. Like it felt like at that time in that generation, it just they felt like they were a lot older playing, comedic roles in that sense. I don't know, but anyways, moving to the 90s though, I feel like it kind of seemed like the same trend as the 80s in a sense. Maybe a little less. I don't know. Maybe 90s was probably more like raunchy in a sense, in a different fashion.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe the later part of the 90s got definitely a little bit more on that side, but I think very early on, like you kind of start with Repossessed, which was Leslie Nielsen again.
No kidding.
You got Naked Gun, which was Leslie Nielsen again.
Shots.
Hot Shots, which was
Leslie Nielsen again.
Actually, it wasn't.
Oh, I'm kidding. I don't know. I didn't watch it. It
actually was Charlie Sheen.
Oh, was it? I didn't know. Yeah. Oh, well, okay. Yeah. Okay. We'll see. And then Charlie, that's right. Because Charlie seemed to have a lot of the 90s in a sense.
Yeah. So he did that one. And then part deux. Which was 93. In between that, the National Lampoon's Loaded Weapon one.
Okay.
Which was, I believe, Emilio Estevez.
Oh, Charlie Sheen's brother.
Yeah. One of my favorites, Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Which was not anyone. It was the guy who also played in Princess Bride. I can't remember his name.
It was
What's his name?
Hey, Blinken. Did you say Abe Lincoln? No, I said, hey, Blinken.
Hey, Blinken.
So stupid, but it's awesome.
Well, I will say, see, I'm surprised you didn't. Well, yeah, I guess never mind. Princess Bride wasn't really a parody, but look, man, I already told you my favorite quote, and that was actually in our favorite quotes episode a long time ago. It was, "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die."
That's not a parody movie, though.
I know it's not a parody. I mean, it kind of should have been, with Andre the Giant and whatnot. I mean, half the shit they were doing. I mean, and then was it? I'm trying to remember. Was it that movie with Billy Crystal when he would go, "Yeah, the mutton, lettuce, tomato. The mutton's got to be nice and lean." I think it's that one. I want to say it was that one, but anyways, I'm just going on a tangent. I'm just saying.
After Robin Hood, we got Naked Gun 33 1/3, The Final Insult. I think I've only watched Blank Man once, and that was I want to say Damon Wayans.
You got me, man. I don't think I've actually watched that one.
Dracula Dead and Loving It. Guess who was in that one?
I'm going to assume Leslie Nielsen.
Spy Hard. Guess who was in that one?
Leslie Nielsen.
High School High.
Not Leslie Nielsen.
No, not Leslie.
It was what? Will Ferrell?
No, actually,
I thought it was. That was.
I'm gonna have to look that one up because it's on the tip of my tongue. But that one came out in '96, and I think I did see that one, but it's been a long time since I've seen it. And it's kind of one of those movies that like parodies, like the teacher, like the substitute teacher coming into, a hard high school, that kind of thing, and it's John Lovitz.
He was in that movie.
He was.
Jesus.
He played the substitute teacher, and I mean it's Tia Carrera, Mekhi Phifer.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, I don't know. I like I said, I feel like the '90s was kind of. This is where, like I said, like kind of in a sense where you saw the Charlie Sheen, you saw a little bit of Leslie Nielsen, you saw maybe some random, actors now at this point, because like later on in the '90s, it became, like I said, more raunchy, and it definitely had more, like I would say more different actors that were doing it now. Like because of these movies that have already became beforehand, I feel like they were kind of like, okay, well, we're gonna make it, more prominent in a sense. And so like I feel like that's when a lot of actors, like that's what I was talking about before, where a lot of actors that were established were starting to do all this, so that way they can maybe get that hype at the same time. With really at this point, you're not going to make a whole lot of movie on a low budget film like that. To be honest, I mean, even nowadays, you're not going to do that now.
Yeah, I mean, the Naked Gun movies, I think the comedy kind of stayed the same, and I think you can say the same for at least for Hot Shots and Robin Hood. I think for the most part, like those movies, the comedy stayed pretty relatively the same. Although they did kind of morph a little bit with the age. Obviously, in the '90s, it's a little bit the trend in the society now. The '90s are different than the '80s. So with the new crowd, you have to change some of that humor. But yet with movies like Repossessed and Spy Hard and High School High, especially Dracula Dead and Loving It too, like some of those movies, like the comedy shifted to '90s kids to relate to them better. And one of the scenes from Repossessed, and I don't know why this scene sticks in my head, but it's a scene, because it's basically like it's kind of like Exorcist, like in the set of like somebody, there's somebody possessed. Leslie Nielsen obviously is in that movie, and there's a girl that like she pulls her skirt up, right, so you can see like everything. And
that when he's describing it, it's like
he tells her, he's like, pull your skirt down, and she pulls the skirt all the way off. And and he's just kind of like, it's one of those like stupid moments where like she did exactly like the literal sense of what he instructed her to do. even though it was like he just meant to pull the dress down.
Right. And so that, can cover certain things. It's like, nah, I'm just going to take it off. It's all good.
But he was like, pull your dress down. And she just pulled the whole, it was just in the movie. It's just hilarious. But, Hot Shots is one of my favorites. Robin Hood obviously is up there on my list. The Naked Gun movies, I think if you look at them as a whole, like the three movies, if you look at them as like, one series of movies, they are what they are. They're good movies. Some of the other ones, like High School High, it's okay. It's not like the greatest movie ever made. I mean, John Lovitz is funny, but he can get annoying.
Yeah, and it's funny. A lot of his movies that he does, it's like he always has to be that rich asshole. It's literally, if you look at almost everything he's ever done, he's always a rich asshole in some regard. It's like he never just plays like a regular character. He's always got to be like the nice luxury kind of style, kind of person. And it's like, and that's where I'm like, all right, you're a fucking prick. Like, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Cause he does. He kind of has that annoying kind of vibe in a sense. And I agree. It depends on the kind of actor, like I said before, where, if you didn't have Leslie Nielsen doing it, like how, what would the movies look like today? And like, who was going to take over that, like, King parody kind of, actor kind of role in a sense. Like I would say he was the kind of like the king of that realm in a sense, for the most of like the 80s and 90s in a sense. But like, moving forward, it's like you don't have, I always think of like, and I was going to sound random, but like, like Weird Al, right? Like he parodies every friggin' song from, back in the 80s all the way up till now and, so forth. I mean, he's been doing it for years, but it's like, he's the king of doing that in like the music world, but like, who's going to be like, let's say the next, guy, like that's the go-to guy for a parody movie. You know what I mean? Like that's the guy you want to have in that movie every single time.
Yeah.
Like you don't have that nowadays. Now it's just a bunch of shit that basically people throw together and it's
and we'll get to
I know
more
we'll get
modern
to that.
times. I mean, going from the 90s into the 2000s, early 2000s, I think is still great. I mean, going into the 90s, those movies are still really, really good. I mean, not all of them, but most of them. Going into the early 2000s, I think they're good, and then they start going in a really different direction. So, very, very starting of the 2000s, right off the gate, scary movie. I mean,
the scary, like we've already mentioned before this, like 1 through 3. You're right; they were absolutely the best out of all of them because I know that they didn't stop at 5.
And
it kept up going.
Scary movie. I mean, you're looking at Scream. You're looking at, I mean, even parts of like Friday. Like that movie parodied so many different movies.
Oh yeah, I mean, like you were looking at like The Exorcist. You were looking at the what's her name, the one that comes out of the screen, like on the TV.
The Grudge.
The Grudge. Like they had random ass shit, like just throwing it in there, and you're just like. Yeah, or no, grab onto my strong hand. Like it was those.
Anybody want some mashed potatoes?
I made it nice and I don't remember what the hell he said, but like that. I'm telling you, like that guy alone
nice
was
creamy,
nice and creamy, boy. No, or like, oh, my favorite. It was the stupidest one. It was with I can't remember which Wayans brother, but like he was in the room and he was sleeping, and the clown comes out of nowhere, and. He like basically because he hears the clown sound, and then all of a sudden
he
looks under the bed.
That was Poltergeist, yeah.
He looks under the bed and like he's like, hey, and he's like, wow, like basically the arms come out, he grabs them, he's like, okay, and then of course he's out of the bed, and then all of a sudden you see the clown come out, and he's like, ooh, and he's like, what the hell happened? He's like, and then all of a sudden you just see. Yeah, I'll say it, guys. It's a black dick that just wraps around his neck, and he's like, "Come back here, boy. You're gonna have a fun time now." It's the stupidest shit, but like, it was a great scene in that one moment. But like, it's that same style. It's like you had all those random ass shit at the same time. But in some ways, it was weird. But like, it did have a plot, and that was the one kind of interesting piece is that even though with a parody movie, that movie had a plot, and just like in the second one and the third one. So it was interesting that, even with, some of the earlier stuff of like the parodies and whatnot, like I would say a majority of them they probably had a plot, but like they're early on, like they actually had a plot of what was actually going on, and so you actually could watch the movie even though it was random at all times because you never know what you're going to watch.
Yeah, and I mean, the Scary Movie, at least the first three were just hilarious, and I think Damon Wayans' character.
See, well, I don't think it's Damon though. I think so. Damon, I believe, is the older one. It's the two younger ones, the ones that like in White Chicks. Those two. I can't remember. Again, I don't remember their actual first names, but like those two.
I think Keenan was the older one. Was
so,
the gay one? I would say.
Was it? So
I'm pretty sure.
I feel like you have to look this up because I'm confused on which one is which. Because there's 4 brothers, and there's actually, I think there's a couple sisters too, but they don't really.
Yeah, but they weren't in the.
No, they weren't in it. What I'm saying though is that they are part of the Wayne family. They have been in other movies and stuff, but it's just like they weren't in this particular setting. It's the 2 younger ones, I believe, because they were in White Chicks together.
Oh, Marlon Wayans was Shorty.
Okay,
and I one of the scenes with Shorty, I mean there were a lot.
Hold on, he was the one that was always doing like coke or like the meth or whatever. Like he
was always he was always smoking weed, and he was ripping papers like pages out of textbooks.
Yeah, it's like start smoking. Yep.
And the way, like one of the way, I don't know if it was in the first Scary Movie or if it was in another one, but there was like a huge blunt in his room, and I think he actually gets rolled up in his sheets. And it's like his hair is the the tip of the blunt, and like he gets lit up, and like it like the wind starts. It's like he's getting smoked himself.
Or well, actually, by other I know this is
by the goat. Yeah, I think it was the same one with the, take my strong hand. It was that one.
So the other I think it was that one too. When
Sean Wayans was Ray.
Okay, so it was so Marlon and Sean, that makes sense. So I think it was. So Marlon, by playing Shorty, he also, what was it? I think it was The Exorcist or somebody like that, because he like, I don't know what it was, but like he was scared of her for whatever reason, and like all of a sudden you just see this brown paper bag on top of the girl, and you're like, yeah. But I'm not going to describe what they were doing, but like. He's just like, I want to see your face. He's like, I want to see you. And he's like, no, just keep doing what you're doing.
So Scary Movie 2, it says, Exorcist, Poltergeist, Hannibal, What Lies Beneath, The House on Haunted Hill, and even goes to like Charlie's Angels and Mission Impossible 2.
That was because the girls, when they were fighting in like slow motion, like in that weird scene, like that was the Charlie Angels kind of Mission Impossible kind of thing, but. Looking at like some of the other ones besides Scary Movie, it to me, like I didn't really watch a whole lot of them besides maybe, it was either superhero movie or epic movie. I can't remember which one. I think actually I might have watched both, either epic and superhero, because superhero was with Drake Bell. I remember that.
Yeah, that was the dragonfly, right?
Yeah,
you got bitten by a dragonfly,
and it became basically a dragon. Like he was, I think it was Dragonfly was his actual name. But like, it was basically a big ass parody on like all superhero movies in a sense of like, Marvel, like a little bit DC, a little bit of everything else. And you're just like, okay. And then I think who was Xavier, or like a pretend to be one? I want to say it was like Kevin Hart or somebody random that was like, random Xavier who's just sitting in a wheelchair, or I can't remember. Who it was, but.
I mean, it definitely like, you have epic movie, you have date movie, superhero movie, disaster movie.
But but you notice the thing though, date movie, superhero movies, disaster. It's like you couldn't have think of a better fucking name than.
Well, you have Scary Movie, and I think you take the, the popularity of they had a lot of popularity with Scary Movie. So maybe take let's take superhero movies or disaster movies, and
I get what you're saying.
Play on that, but like you take those and the comedy's not even remotely the same.
No, and that's the thing.
The budget's not even remotely the same.
Not even close. But that's the problem. I think the difference is that if they had maybe help from the Wayans brothers, maybe they could have made it a lot better.
Hey,
You know?
I mean,
But I just feel like you're right.
Scary Movie, I think had a little bit more of a budget than a lot of these, but
Again,
I
because
mean,
the Wayne brothers had that success and
yeah.
they knew how to make those kinds of movies.
You
But
know what movie was pretty funny on this list
wow.
that you skipped over? Kung Pao Enter the Fist.
Was this I'm trying to remember, was that one when he like there was a cow and he like actually beat the shit out of a cow?
I believe so, yes.
Because the cow was like doing kung fu on him and he was like I'm pretty sure what was it? It was the scene basically he was like finding the cow and the cow basically took its udders and started shooting it. The udders were basically being fired by the cow shooting this guy with milk and shit, and it was just random as shit. Like
Yeah.
the
So
whole scene was weird.
this was Steve Odenkirk
Yeah,
that was in this movie, and he actually directed it. So he shot new material
yeah,
over an old film. So he basically was, kind of
basically
just
merged the two. Yeah,
dubbing himself over old film, shooting new scenes, which I mean, I'm sure it has been done before, but like what he had done in this movie, I think was it's stupid.
well, it's extremely stupid.
It's extremely stupid, but it's hilarious. Like this movie is so funny. And it's so I mean, it's outlandish, but it is so funny to see how well it's blended together.
Yeah, I mean, for its time, and it's, I mean, granted, it was early 2000s. I'm not saying they didn't have CGI like it is now. I mean, granted, early 2000s, like it's weird when you start watching a movie. Let's say that was just made in like the really early 2000s, and then you look at it today, you almost feel like the 90s and the early 2000s almost look exactly the same because it almost because they didn't really get to that new kind of way of like looking at CGI and stuff. Like it almost took like 10 more years to literally get to a point of like, oh, because it's weird because then you could think, okay, you look at early 2000s, you look at the 90s, and you're like, almost looks exactly the same. Like
Yeah.
you don't see really the big differences, and it's like, oh, wait, this came out in 2001. You're like, wait, I thought this movie came out in the 90s. You're like, oh no, it came out like literally like let's say 10 years ago at the time, and you're like, yeah, no, like I can't even imagine that. I don't know,
I
but
mean, it's amazing. I mean, a lot of these movies don't even really have huge budgets, and I think if there was a movie that came out, I mean, I'm sure like the new Naked Gun movie is probably going to have a bigger budget if they have Liam Neeson.
yeah, I mean, depending.
But even like a Naked Gun movie doesn't really need to have that much CGI with it.
Okay, so keep in mind though, so in let's say 91, he was 64 years old.
Right.
Motherfucker,
Leslie
I
Nielsen.
know. Hold on. Let's put his age now. You do realize that he's.
I want to say he's dead now.
What is he dead?
I'm pretty sure.
Let's look that up, Matt, because now I feel like an asshole.
I mean, if he was 64 and 91,
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, I'm pretty sure he would be either in his 90s or he'd be like Betty White and be close to 100 at this point. Because I'd be curious, because I honestly
he
don't know.
died in 2010.
Okay, well then, that explains a lot. Never mind. But anyways,
So Kung Fu Hustle was another one. It was similar to Kung Pao. I don't know if I've ever seen Kung Fu Hustle, to be honest.
honestly, there's a lot of movies in the 2000s besides really Scary Movie and like epic movie and stuff like
But
that.
that's
I
really
didn't really
where,
watch a whole lot of
yeah, I
them.
mean, it was really like 2006, and that's when Date Movie came out. 2006, 2007, that's really, I think, where movies started shifting. Because then you have Scary Movie 4, you have Epic Movie. We have already mentioned kind of superhero disasters and Scary Movie 5.
I'm
I think the ones that, the two sets of movies that are different from the rest of these, and not surprising, they're done by the Wayans brothers.
you wonder why.
A Haunted House and A Haunted House 2.
Right.
Those are absolutely hilarious.
Well, And that's the thing about the Wayans brothers at that time. Like, they established themselves back in the 90s at this point. But like, moving forward, like they knew how to get the same hype. It
Right.
doesn't matter whether it was the 90s or now. It didn't shit, they can make a movie right now and I guarantee you it'll be a very popular movie.
Yeah,
to
and
go
these
see.
ones were based on the Paranormal Activity movies
Right, that were coming out, yep.
that were already out at the time. They did parody movies based on those, and they're just. I mean, these ones are by far anything that came up before. In the later 2000s.
Well, I mean, really, it would be 2010s. Like that's really when a lot of this was coming out, though.
Well, I mean, you look at anything beyond 2006. I mean,
Well, yeah.
these ones were kind of the light in that kind of darkness of
What parody?
date movie, Scary Movie 4. Even though it had funny moments, it wasn't really funny. And Scary Movie 5, I got through the whole movie and I don't think I laughed once.
I honestly, like I said, I feel like what I already told Matt this too. I think this is before the episode. You notice that a lot of the 2000s, like a lot of those movies, why did they always have to have Carmen Electra? Like, why did they have to have her? Out of anybody else in the world, like like she somehow like got dubbed this like girl that always had to be in a parody movie because
Yeah.
like who was it? Which one was the take on Spartan? Like the Spartan, movie, like this is Sparta, like
Meet the Spartans.
oh yeah, right. So like that would have been another one you could have put on here too.
Oh, I initially had it on there, but
But like you know what I'm saying? Like she was in that one. She was also in I don't know if it was 4 or 5 for Scary Movie. She was randomly in that too. I feel like there's a lot of these movies that she somehow randomly comes into play. I'm just saying, like, I'm not just picking on her, but I feel like there always has to have this like you gotta have a really hot chick. Hold on, Carmen Electra. Here you go. But she was like kind of like dubbed in this like era, like she had to be the go-to.
yeah, I mean, she was Meet the Spartans. I mean, she was in the initial Scary Movie.
Was it the original? I thought it was
yeah.
later on too.
She was in Epic Movie. She was in Scary Movie 4.
Yep. See, I'm telling you, there's a pattern here.
She was in Date Movie. She was in Disaster Movie.
What did I just say? I just said that she is the go-to girl. She was the go-to girl for a lot of these movies.
Probably because she's a dumbass.
Matt basically just said she's a dumbass.
She plays a good dumbass. That's probably just.
There you go.
It's probably like Anna Faris. Like she plays a good dumb character. Like,
I mean, what?
Have you seen Anna Faris like in a real serious role where you're like, wow, she really knocked it out of the park
as a dumb person? No,
I'm just saying. I mean, I'm sure she can play a serious role, but I mean, I don't think you're gonna take Carmen Electra seriously at this.
No, at this day and age, you're not.
Yeah,
I mean,
she was in. It looks like she was in some kind of National Lampoon movie too, but
she was. No, so the one thing that Matt and I did watch, it was kind of recent too, and this just came out or was coming out recently. It was the that stupid Avengers take on movie.
Oh,
it was the dumbest parody I've ever seen, and it really, I mean, it took
that one had Shawn Michaels in it.
Yeah, the fact that
he had stupid makeup.
No, I know, but it was because it literally was like if you took a Marvel movie and said, "Here you go." And
if you got like acrylic paint from Michaels and a paintbrush, that was the makeup I think that they did on the movie.
I don't know. I mean, literally watching the trailer and watching it with Matt at one point.
Hey, can you sew? I can do it by hand. You're hired.
You're hired, man. No, like it was honestly when you watch it, it is. I can't even. I mean, we never watched it, but it just when I looked at the trailer, I'm like, is this really what the 2020s in a sense are really going to come to?
I mean,
it's rough.
It's awful, and it's rough, and I mean the graphics are rough, and it's just like.
I mean, you wonder how much their budget was. I honestly think it was like
$10.
Chick, show me a Coke. I'm just saying because it was bad. I mean, because it's almost seems like they really need to like. They just need to put it into the whole parody movies. They just need to leave it alone.
Well, that's what, I mean, that was like the whole question of like, what were they doing were people in the 70s, 80s, and 90s that different from people today?
I think the thing was, Matt, you know what it is? And I've already explained this to you. I guarantee you, if back in the day, if they had a chat GBT, I guarantee you they wouldn't use it. You know why? Because they knew how to fucking write a script and they knew exactly how to make it comedy gold. And I think that's the difference between now and then is because they actually, I don't know, I think they really, they took it to another level as in like they took it outside of the box and they literally created their own kind of universe in a sense. Like Mel Brooks created his own basically universe, and you look at the Wayans brothers, even in the 90s and stuff,
Yeah.
like these guys and Mighty Python, like they created something that was their own and they made it basically themselves and they said, okay, well, this is ours and nobody else is doing it this way. And then if you know what I'm saying, like those three in particular, like they created their styles and they said,
Yeah.
you know what, we're going to work with that and we're going to continue to do that. And that's where I feel like, you look at nowadays, like half the shit, depending on what you're looking at, it's either bullshit thrown together and you're like, hey, it's about a dog and a cat, and then we got a random dude who just farts and shits in the corner. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, it's the stupidest shit that you just randomly throw together.
And it's not funny, and there's no budget, and that's where if you go to Amazon Prime, like that's kind of the graveyard for parody movies now, and everything that's made just gets dumped there. Like, they're not funny. They're not good.
No, it's not like you're going to go out and be like, I'm going to go to Best Buy and go, hold on, you know what you're going to do? You're going to go over to that like $5 bin. You're going to be like, oh, yeah, it's not even fucking worth my fucking time. You throw it right back on the bed because like that's where it is. And that's where I feel like you're right. With Amazon, it's like, yeah, it's free. Yeah, fuck it. Maybe I'll watch it. Maybe if I'm really that fucking bored or if I'm that really stupid enough to really want to take the time to watch a movie like that. Like that's what I'm saying about like nowadays. It's very depressing in the world of parodies because I mean, I feel like you could do so much, but I feel like they need to find somebody of this generation of like the Leslie Nielsen's and the Mighty Pythons and the Wayans brothers. Like
Well,
you need to find somebody new.
Yeah, you need to find like the Mel Brooks of today's society,
Right,
Like
or something
you
like
need
that.
to find the Jim Abrams, the David Zucker, the Jerry Zucker. You need to find the Wayans brothers, like the creators that are like those creators. Like Mel Brooks knows funny. Like the things that he's created are just comedy gold.
Right.
And when he dies, like
Honestly, he's gonna be. I mean, he's up there, my friend.
and I mean, it could happen any time.
Are you sure he's not dead?
Realistically, I don't believe he's dead.
I mean, he's got to be close because he's been around a bit, and even in the early '70s, or really when Blazing Saddles came out. I mean, Blazing Saddles came out in '74.
Says he's 97.
Holy shit. Okay, my point is he's getting there, buddy. I don't know how long.
He's still alive.
He's still kicking it.
But like I said, I mean, it could happen today. It could happen in another year. Who knows? But like, the dude's mind just has so much comedy gold that like, I hope, honestly to God, like I hope somebody has gotten the knowledge that he's got about what's funny.
Yeah.
And he's able to at least pass on like 10% of it.
I hope
to somebody else, because that's what, like, if we want to have more of these movies that are actually good and that are actually funny, we need that. Like Jim Abrams, David and Jerry Zucker, like they did Airplane, Naked Gun, Top Secret, Hot Shots, Scary Movie. They did those movies.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like you basically, I'll say it. Like unless they find somebody like that, basically parody movies are dead, and that's just plain and simple. Like pretty much after that, what we said, there's not many movies that you can say like are that good unless you're looking at the Wayans brothers or looking at those kind of individuals because they haven't really done a whole lot of
right. And I mean, even the Wayans brothers haven't really done. I don't think they've really done a parody movie
in a long time
since Haunted House.
Well, that too, but I was even thinking more.
I don't even think Keenan or Sean has done anything as far as acting. I mean, I haven't seen them.
I know Marlon's done a few things. Sean, maybe not so much. I mean, Keenan, though, I mean, but he's the oldest. I know he's the oldest.
Yeah.
And you have Damon, too, that, probably hasn't done a whole lot either. But I know, like, Damon Wayans Jr., his son or whatever, like, he's been doing some things, but, like, it's kind of weird. You notice, like, those four brothers, like, they're the funniest and, like, whatnot. And then you're looking at the son of, Damon, and it's like, I feel like he's just there because he has the name, but I don't know if he's really that, same iconic kind of funny. You know what I'm saying? Like they had their own style. Like each one of them had their own style of funny. This one I feel like is just kind of like, oh, I have the name. I must be funny, right? Like that's not how that works, kid. Like I don't think
Yeah.
that I don't know. I mean, I will say that when it comes down to um, kind of that favorite, kind of movies. I know you're gonna have your list. I'll say mine real quick. Um, I'll say it. Like I feel like each one of the big players we just mentioned, right? So like I'll say my honestly, I'm gonna steal one from you, which is true because honestly, the Scary Movie 1 and 2 were probably my favorites out of all of them for sure. I'm not saying 3 wasn't, but those two were really the go
Right.
getters.
Yeah.
But then like for me, like Blazing Saddles, man, like Mel Brooks, man, it was one of the funniest. I still remember me Mongo, like the random shit in that movie, like, hey, where the white women at? And you're like half the shit in the movie, and you're like,
Give me a second while I whip this thing out.
he's like, what was it? He was basically one of my favorites, real quick, is when he was pointing a gun to himself, and he was like basically telling the town, he's like, oh, he's gonna do it. He's gonna kill me now. I tell you what, like he was basically making the town believe that he was being held at gunpoint. And the entire, he's like, don't make me do it, man. I'm gonna shoot it, like,
Yeah.
and he was just doing it like stupidly. And it's just like, do you really have to be that much of a moron to like get a hold? Like, it was the stupidest thing, but like, Gene Wilder in that movie, man, like he did a great job. I think it was great, like how he like made that comedy gold with him. So
Yeah.
like, having like I said, the two Ku Klux Klan brothers, and then also he's like, where are the wild women at? And like, beat the shit out of them real quick and then take their costumes. But, it's just random shit like that. And like, that's what made it funny to me, growing up, granted, I get it. It was well before my time. But like, of course, my dad was like, yeah, you gotta watch it. And so, of course, I'm a kid watching it and I'm sitting there like, should I really be watching this movie? Should I really be doing that? But like, and then the other one really is the Holy Grail. Like, I can't even tell you how many times I've seen that with my dad and my brother. We'd sit there. Hell, I put it on one day when they came over to my house, and we just started watching it with our family. And then, granted, everyone in our family is like, "Why the fuck did you put this thing on?" And I said, "Because we're watching it. God damn it! I'm watching it with my brother, and I'm watching it with my dad." And so, we'd sit there and watch it, and everyone's like, like, "Why do you watch that shit?" I was like, British humor, man. It's one of those kind of things that you have to get used to, but like these guys just were pioneers in doing it. Like they just made it really fucking stupid, but they made it funny in a way. Like really, I'll say it. Like there's a reason why, you look at what we find it funny as men versus what women find funny, right? So like as men, we find the stupidest shit, of course, the most funniest things on the planet.
Right.
As women, it's like I don't know. I really don't know what exactly is funny, but like
outside of Monty Python, I used to love. I mean, growing up, I used to love watching Mr. Bean.
And that was another good one.
Yeah, and that was like probably the dumbest.
Oh, Rowan Atkinson is like
British humor, but he was so funny.
I mean, he hasn't done that in so long, but like it's funny. Like I think there was I don't know if it was like a clip or something I saw, but like he was like at an orchestra or something like that, and he was sitting there playing the piano, of course, as Mr. Bean, and he's like, I don't know, he's just doing his stupid like act that he would normally do, and he's just like, he's just like, looking at his phone, he's doing the random Mr. Bean kind ofness that he's doing, and then it's like, he's like, oh shit, I'm actually, I'm supposed to be playing right now, and like pretending to do it, and it's like. I don't know. You're right. It's like you find those actors that they have that one character. It was kind of like what's his other name? I know he died recently too. Pete Herman, Pee Wee. Yeah, Pee Wee Herman. Like that stupid character. Like it's like he had his niche, right? Like he had that like one little thing that he could do. But like that's why you look at Leslie Nielsen. Like he made those like the airplane movies, the Naked Gun movies, like basically he didn't really change his character. He just acted the same and just kept doing it each time that he was in his role. So like that's where I feel like you have those actors that can just really like define that role and then just like bring that character everywhere they go, in a sense. Like that Rowan Atkinson, like that's what they're gonna do, and that's how they're gonna make that that iconic kind of funniness in a sense.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's why nowadays you might get some of those people, but it's kind of that rare gem nowadays. You're not going to find it as much. I feel like, back then it was probably maybe a little bit easier because you're shining them up a little bit and you're, getting them in those kinds of movies. But like now it's like, hey, you're going to find a pile of shit. Well, you're going to get a pile of shit while you're at it. So
Yeah, I mean, now the parody movies aren't the same because now they're not like you're not finding those bigger actors. They're like, you're much smaller.
they're like your small town fucking hunky down
Like
down the
ones that
road.
have been, past actors maybe on Saturday Night Live or.
Well, what are you trying to say about Saturday Night Live, man?
I'm just saying, like you're finding those types of actors that
Are you trying to find
are more like parody or.
Wait, you're saying that like Pete Davidson should go on parody tours or something? I mean, he could.
But those are the kind of people that they usually would look for that are not necessarily good at acting, but they're good at playing like roles, or they're good at doing impressions, or they're good at doing like things.
I mean,
They're not good at saying like, "Hey, you're the greatest actor on the planet. We
No.
want you in this movie."
but it's funny, like you look at some of the best like comedians and stuff like that. So when you look at like, well, it's actually ironic enough where, for example, Jim Carrey, right? He didn't get he never started out in Saturday Night Live, didn't do anything like that. Actually, it was the Wayans brothers that helped him out to get where he was at. And it was funny how that, came to be, but like
Living Color.
in Living Color and whatnot. And then you look at, Saturday Night Live, don't get me wrong, they've put on some great comedians like Adam Sandler, Chevy Chase.
Oh yeah, they've
like
had
all slew of them. Like there's
they've had some great actors on there.
Yeah,
And I'm
because
not
that's how
saying
they
anything,
started.
I'm not saying anything against them.
No, I mean, but a lot of them started through SNL and then became those actors that you see now and so on.
Obviously, for some of these movies, like you have to also look at like like superhero movie. You have to look at how well is that script written.
I don't know. Why don't you talk to Drake Bell and he might tell you?
Because it's like if you have a director that also isn't really super passionate about the movie they're making, or the producer isn't really super passionate about the movie they're making, or if the budget, you have to look at all these factors too, because most of these movies are just kind of crappy.
Well, again, if you have a $10 budget, you got to get a $10 piece of shit. So, I mean, if you have like, let's say, I don't know, like $20 million, well, you might get something better, but it may not be as well as you think it was. So, like, that's where I'm saying, like, that movie we were talking about, the new one with the Marvel kind of superhero theme, that was a $10 piece of shit that they just decided to throw together.
It was terrible. I mean, it's probably just as good as Ginger Dead Man or
Ginger Dead Man.
What was the other one that we talked about in?
Oh, I could think of a couple, but I was thinking
it was the Bong one. What was the Bong one?
Oh, Killer Bong or
Killer Bong. Yeah, that one.
Well, I know what was it? Things Killing. Like
the
like stupid ones.
A lot of those.
Leprechaun.
But they, Amazon Prime. Like you go on there and it's like that Avengers movie would be right next to Ginger Dead Man and Ginger Dead Man 2 and Killer Bong.
Well, hold on. Which one was it that had like 75 like different names? It was like 1, 2, 3, and then it had like it was that one, or was it the Jaws trailer that we looked at?
That was the Killer Bong. It was like Killer Bong 666 and 777 and
like
there's so many of them.
Killer Bong Who Ate Nine.
It was, Killer Bong versus Ginger Dead Man. Yeah, there's a whole slew of them, but they fall right in line with all the other ones where you watch them and I'm sure those actors probably got paid maybe $10 for
literally their role
for being in that movie.
Hey, hold on, here's a box of donuts. Fine, buddy. No, I mean it's crazy though that I guess really, you know what? I'm going to throw this out there. What do you think for parody wise? If you had to choose an era, Like, but we're gonna exclude the 2000s. Okay, we're just gonna kind of we're gonna throw that to the side because we already know that sure, Scary Movie would probably win this debate. Out of all like all three of those eras, so 70s, 80s, and 90s, who do you think did the best? Or do you think they have their own right in their own way for, let's say a certain like okay, let me if you don't want to answer like that, how about this? For each era, who do you think was the big dog? Like they were the ones of that, era. Like who was the one that, defined it? Was it the Mel Brooks era, this one, like so on and so forth?
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, if I were to answer it the first way, I would say probably the 80s has a clear edge over most of the other.
Really? Not even the 70s.
Well, I mean, the 70s, yeah, sure, you have your Monty Pythons, which probably ruled more.
I'm not even just saying
I
that.
mean, not in
I'm
cinema,
thinking,
but I mean,
I'm thinking
more
like
of TV. But
right, but I'm even thinking like Blazing Saddles. I'm thinking, Mel Brooks is like those movies kind of defined a lot of stuff. I'm not saying that Airplane and all them didn't, but
I mean, Mel Brooks had his movies. I mean, he did History of the World. He did Spaceballs. So I mean, he did have stuff in the 80s that he did. But I mean, you also have Airplane. You have another Monty Python. Plus, you have Naked Gun.
true. No, I mean, don't get me wrong. I get it. I'm just saying that I don't know. And that's why I was wondering because, like, I
I
guess
mean, for the 90s, I mean, beyond the two Naked Guns and Robin Hood Men in Tights, I mean, Hot Shots was good, but it's not Naked Gun and it's not Robin Hood Men in Tights good.
yeah. I mean, like I said, I figured out of those, okay. I mean, I can see what you mean by like the '80s having more maybe the clearer edge in some ways.
I
But
think
like,
when I think of parody movies, Airplane and Spaceballs would be, I think, my filter. Like, if I were to take Scary Movie, how does this compare to Spaceballs and Airplane? It's funny. You take that Avengers movie on Prime.
that
How does it compare to Airplane or Spaceballs? There's not even a comparison.
No, I can tell you where it goes. It goes right in the fucking trash, and then you take a shit on that trash, and then you keep going in further. But no, but
It's a dumpster fire, and that's exactly what I'm saying. Like, I think you look at Airplane and you look at Spaceballs, and Spaceballs is Mel Brooks. Airplane is the Zucker brothers and Jim Abrams.
yeah,
So I think between the Zuckers and Abrams and Mel Brooks, I think you take the two of them. Well, really the four of them, and I think your Spaceballs, your Airplane, your Blazing Saddles, your Young Frankenstein, and all the other movies that the four of them have done between the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and in the early 2000s, because I don't think they really have done anything
no, I mean,
beyond that.
but for me, it's like when I was just mentioning, like I had to give it to all of them in a sense. I mean, granted, probably not. I mean, I'm not saying that Jim Abrams and Jerry Zucker did not, and David Zucker. Like, I'm not saying that they didn't deserve, like props because they did it, in their own way. I mean, Leslie Nielsen, I guess, if you're looking at actor wise, for majority of it, like, yeah, he was that guy for them that made their movies, plain and simple. Like, it's funny, like you didn't mention like when you talk about the Wayne brothers, like you didn't mention like Damon or Sean or Marlon or whatever. Like you didn't mention any of those, but like you mentioned Leslie Nielsen because he really was the actor that helped to find those sets of movies and that that kind of parody style where Mel Brooks, yes, he was usually a character in his movie as a random extra or random whatever, but like he was more the director. Like everybody else made that movie. Like he was in it and it was great and it was awesome that he did that. And then technically with Mighty Python, it's just a slew of people. There wasn't really just one individual. It was a bunch of friggin' people coming all together and they just did it together. They just did it like that.
Yeah.
But for me, if I was to answer, I mean, for me, I would say the '70s, and I'm just going to say it. The reason why is because they're the pioneers. Like they were the ones that they brought it to a level. Like Mel Brooks, Mighty Python, those guys, like they brought their A game. And they defined what a parody really would be in that time frame. And the fact that they did a lot of, honestly, it was probably one of the most raunchiest shits. Like literally at that time, it was very, it was out there, and you could, and like if you tried to do that today, it would be banned. Like you wouldn't have it on TV. I mean, granted, you could buy it now; it's not a big deal. But like,
Yeah.
you couldn't like go to the theaters and watch that damn movie because they'd probably turn it down. They'd probably be like, nope, sorry, we're gonna cancel it. Woke culture, whatever. Seriously, they would have canceled it by now. And that's the problem. Even both sides of movies, it didn't matter which one.
Yeah.
But like, looking at those, I'm also thinking that, like I said, the '70s had that edge. But like, yeah, I mean, even if I was to choose like who was the best out of them all, you're right. I would say it's very hard to choose like which sets of movies were really the best. Because again, we all have our preferences. There's different things that we like better than not and whatever else. But Mel Brooks had a certain style that I would say in this day and age could not be replicated unless he found somebody to replace him. Or you couldn't take it to Wayans Brothers. Like if I'm just sorry, like good luck trying to find a replacements for all of them.
Yeah.
Like it's hard as shit to do that.
I mean, I think you look at the early players and, looking at the '70s ones that are in the list. I mean, it's really Monty Python and it's really just Mel Brooks. I mean, I think the Zucker and Jim Abrams kind of team up was really probably after that.
Oh, of course. I mean, they probably had to watch those movies to get some of the ideas to where they were going to be at that time.
Right.
And that's probably what happened, and that's fine. But like again, without really Mel Brooks and the Mighty Python crew, there wasn't really anything that you could base anything on unless you were watching that at that time and you're like, oh wait, we're gonna do something in the '80s and we're gonna try to do some stuff in the '90s, but at that time they're just like, hey, well, fuck it, we'll do whatever we want.
But even, I mean, you look at Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, and I mean, they're not, even though they're considered parodies, I don't know if they're, I mean, you look at Airplane, I mean, that's a parody of, the airplane kind of crash types of movie,
Yeah.
airplane tragedy type of movie. And I think that's really where the parodies start. I mean,
Yeah.
Monty Python Life of Brian, I mean, you're taking a story that starts with Jesus and you put a random guy named Brian
Into the mix.
into the story, and that's kind of, I mean, that's a parody in itself.
Well, I mean, if you look at Blazing Saddles, I mean, I understand the title doesn't really say much, but like when you're watching it, it's literally just a play on fucking the Old West. Like that's where people would say, okay, well, if you're looking at the title, no, you would think that it would not be really more of a parody of anything,
Right.
besides just random shit. But like, it's interesting though. Like, even though it was I feel like one of the first, besides like the Holy Grail, where they were doing like the movie. And then they were going into real time. Like those two movies were the only ones that I remember. Like they, at one point in the movie, like they went into the real world time frame, and they were like, fucking shit up, or in Blazing Saddles. I mean, they were in a fucking, what was it, a fist fight with a bunch of what was it? It was the tap dancing guys, and they were all like, "Oh, you sissy," or like, they're beating the crap out of
Yeah.
each other. It was a bunch of cowboys and like trying to beat them up, and it was random shit like that. And like, and then you look at the Blazing Saddles or not Blazing, Mighty Python, and it's all of a sudden you go from King Arthur to then, modern day, and they're just, the guys are just playing with the coconuts, and they're going against the car, and you're like, wait, where the hell are we right now? And like, where did this come from?
Right.
So the random shit
Yeah.
like that.
And I think that, you look at some of these like Blazing Saddles, yeah, you could say it's a parody of the old, Old West and whatever, Young Frankenstein parody of, the Frankenstein story. But I think I look at the '80s and I say, Airplane, and I see, Spaceballs, and I see Naked Gun, which is obviously the parody of like kind of the Columbo and the the police,
Right side of it, yeah.
the police movies and TV shows and whatnot.
We should not say Police Academy, but yeah.
And I that's where I kind of really see like the very start of like these are parodies of movies that were already being made, where there was a movie similar to Airplane that was just about an airplane crash.
True.
And Airplane was literally just a parody of that movie where they made it funny. And the movie is hilarious. It's one of my favorites. And Spaceballs is, obviously that Star Trek, Star Wars, and it kind of plays on the same themes of, Lone Star and Dark Helmet, who's the Darth Vader type character, and Spaceballs. And
so I think the problem is, man, is that, I'll admit it. I have not watched a whole lot of Leslie Nielsen movies. So you know what? I think for the sake of the argument too, is I will have to give it a shot. And I'll let you know later date, of course. I'll have to let you know how I feel about it, because I feel like, I've watched, like I said, Mel Brooks, I've watched Mighty Python, I've watched the Wayans Brothers, I've done all that, but I have not really watched, like Naked Gun or, that kind of like series of style like he's done. So like I'll have to give it a shot, because like I feel like I'm missing out on something that I should be doing if I, because like I feel like that's a part of, wouldn't say American history, but like, part of the, I would say the genre of like, if you're going to watch parody movies, then I feel like you should watch, these particular individuals in a sense, because like I said, they were kind of like the pioneers. They were kind of the mainstream, like, hey, we're going to push this in the right direction, because like now, when we talked about how literally there's nothing now that is literally even worth watching anymore. It's like at this point, you might as well just take a pile of shit and say, here you go. And by the way, I just decided to take an extra turn on it or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't make any sense.
I just took this giant shit. It's a parody.
It's a parody.
Wait, but that's an actual shit.
Yeah.
And I know that's why it's funny.
Well, hold on. And then you'd be like, and by the way, here's a donut. And then you took a pile of shit and throw that on the donut too. And you're like, wait, what the fuck does this have to do with anything? And you're like,
I don't know. I
just thought it was funny.
It'd be funny.
Like I'm just, fuck it. But all right. I feel like, oh wait, no, actually I lied. Unless you want to do some quotes.
I mean, we can do some quotes. It's
up to you, man.
I mean, there's a lot of quotes that we can do.
Oh, I know. I'm looking at Mighty Python right now. Oh, see, man, I should have brought this up. Man, we should have done this already. Like, bring out your dead. Here's one. 9 pence. I'm not dead. What? Nothing. Here's your 9 pence. I'm not dead. He says he's not dead. Yes, he is. I'm not. He isn't. Well, he will be soon. He's very ill. Like, and it just keeps going on, and literally just, just like stupid as said. Let's see if I can find something here. Yeah, the Black Knight. So, yeah, none shall pass. And you're sitting there like, like, okay. He's like, what? None shall pass. And he's like, I have no quarrel with you, good sir, knight. And he says, I must cross the bridge. He's like, then you shall die. He says, I command you as the king of the Britons to stand aside. He's like, I move for no man. So be it. And then he cuts off his arms. He's like, now stand aside, worthy adversary. He's like, 'tis but a scratch. And this is where I was talking about with the whole, like, cuts off his arms, cuts off his legs, and he wants to bite the shit out of him. And it's like, dude, you can't do anything. Like, you're literally done. And he's like, I'll fight you. I'll bite your head off, or some stupid shit like, oh, here's another one. That's right. The French taunts. So, like, the Frenchman, you know what I'm talking about? So, like, this one.
I know what you're talking about.
So, like, this one's just random. He's like, this is just the beginning. It goes, you don't frighten us, you English pig dogs. Go and boil your bottoms, sons of a silly person. I blow my nose at you, so-called Athor King. You and your silly nuggets. And he keeps going. He's like, what's a strange person? He's like, now look here, my good man. I don't want to talk to you no more, you empty-headed animal food trough wiper. I fart in your general direction.
I fought in your
General
general
direction.
direction.
Your mother was a hamster and your father smelt of elderberries. And you're like, what? And then it just keeps like it's just the Knights Who Say Knee. And then like I know at some point, um, what was it? It was the high. It's funny they don't even mention the second part. So it was basically it went from the Knights Who Say Knee to then we are the Knights Who Say Icky Icky you know it was something stupid. And you're like. He's like, well, we couldn't do that because there was some copyright or it was something stupid that the reason why they changed it or whatever. But again, I don't know. I mean, when you watch, if you ever watch it, like if you guys ever wanted to like watch it or if you haven't watched it, listen to a lot of their quotes and listen to what, like I said, the British kind of style of humor, because again, like granted, this was a medieval time, movie based on like, King Arthur and stuff like that with the round table and whatnot. And like looking at Camelot and like making fun of all that stuff. But like, you look at how, they did it back then, it really is comedy gold. I mean, like you said, some of it was accurate in a sense of like, I'd say historical, maybe not with the coconuts, but, like in certain aspects, like it made it a good movie for that reason,
Yeah.
you know?
So some of the ones that I'm looking at are from obviously Spaceballs because that's one of my favorites. And I'm looking at some of the Dark Helmet quotes, and there's one that it's very very subtle and it's very very short, but the kind of number two character on Dark Helmet's ship is Colonel Sanders, and it's actually spelled with a URZ, not ERS. So Colonel Sanders with a Z.
Yeah, I see this now.
And in the quote, basically, I believe he's telling them like to go to ludicrous speed, and Colonel Sanders is telling them like, oh, this is pretty dangerous. We should build up to ludicrous speed, and he's like, what's the matter, Colonel Sanders? Chicken.
Chicken.
And it's so stupid when you hear it because the dude's name is Colonel Sanders, and when he says chicken, you don't really think about it until you think of KFC.
No, I mean, I mean, it's funny because like when you start looking at some of the character names, like Pizza the Hut, and like Barf, and like some of the random.
I dressed up as Barf.
I know you did, and and I take telling you guys, there's actually a photo.
There is a photo
that Matt doesn't have basically any facial hair besides a soul patch. Okay, that's literally all he had. And I wish he would do it again, but he's not going to do it for some reason. But anyways,
yeah, I actually do, and maybe I'll post it one day.
He won't post it. It's called blackmail. That's the reason why he would never do it. No, I mean, I feel like some of these quotes, like I'm kind of looking at them, a little bit.
Yeah, and there's Dark Helmet has a lot of the like really really good ones, like when he's going up against Lone Star, like he has that kind of Darth Vader quote where he's like, "I am your father's brother's nephew's cousin's former roommate."
You're like, what the fuck?
And obviously Lone Star's like, well, what does that make us? Absolutely nothing, which is what you'll become. It's just so stupid, but it's funny.
Like, okay, here's a random one from Lone Star. You know something, Princess? You're ugly when you're angry. It's like the one-liners. It's like,
yeah,
that's all it would seem like.
You listen, on this ship, you are to refer to me as idiot, not you, captain.
I mean, you know what I mean.
You know what I mean.
Let's see what Barf, because Barf was what's his name, John Candy, right? I'm pretty sure he was that. Yeah, so like he did it. He's like, I'm a mug, half man, half dog. I'm my own best friend.
I'm my own best friend.
Let's see here.
They've gone to plaid.
So like, okay, I'll have the cleavage. I mean the special. Like random shit.
So there's a scene in that movie. I know we talked about it when we talked about Alien, our Alien Xenomorph episode.
Yeah.
You talked about how that scene when the alien, that chest burster came out of that dude, right? You had talked about that scene.
Oh, but that was a long time ago.
In Alien, yeah.
Yeah.
But that same dude from that movie
Yeah.
is in Spaceballs
Oh, is he?
and recreates that scene. And he's eating in the diner, and basically like this alien pops out of his chest and jumps up on the counter, but instead of it just kind of scurrying off, he puts on a little hat and has like this little cane, and he's like the like music comes up and like the lights come onto him, and he's like, "Hello, my baby. Hello, my darling."
Oh, yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
and like the legs are kicking.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I know what you're talking about now. Yeah. It's been a bit, but no, I do understand. And then we'll finish up with Airplane, because I'm kind of looking at some stuff right now too. And like, okay, here's one. So, guy named Randy, he says, "Excuse me, sir. There's been a little bit of a problem in the cockpit." The cockpit? What is it? It's the little room in the front of the plane where the pilot sit. But that's not important right now. I was thinking,
There's a lot of those quotes though from Airplane where they're like, oh, he has to go to a hospital and or something like that, and they're like, "What's that?" "Oh, it's a building,
So, or like this one, the stewardess and the jive speaking passenger. So, like, "Can I get you something?" "Schmofo, butter laying me to the bone, jacking me up. Tight me." And he's like, "What did he say?" He's like, "Cut his say he can't hang." And he said, he said, "Oh, stewardess? I speak jive." He said, blah, blah, blah. Basically, he's saying, the jive lady, he says, "Just hang loose, blood. She gonna catch you up for the rebound on the med side. What is it, big mama? My mama didn't raise no dummies. I dug her rap, and cut me some slack, Jack." And it was like, Chump don't want to help.
Yeah, I love the jive.
Like kind of going back and forth, and it's
Yeah.
like, what the fuck? He's like, "I speak jive, man." You're like, "You what?"
So here's one with Johnny. There's a reporter that's talking to him, and he's asking him, "What kind of plane is it?" And he goes, "Oh, it's a big, pretty white plane with red stripes, curtains in the windows, and wheels. It looks like a big Tylenol."
Or, okay, here's one. So McCroskey's talking to Johnny. He's like, "Johnny, what can you make of this?" Basically, he hands a map to Johnny. He says, "This? Well, I can't make a hat. I can make a brooch, and I can make a pterodactyl." Like, you're okay, cool.
Johnny is like the funniest character.
Oh, okay, here we go. Joey and Murdoch. Here we go. So it says, "Wait a minute, I know you. You're Kareem Abdul-Jabbar." See, this is where I was talking about.
Yeah.
And then he says, "You play basketball for the Los Angeles Lakers." And he's like, "I'm sorry, son, but I think you might be confused with someone else. My name is Roger Murdoch. I'm the co-pilot." He's like, You are Kareem. Just seen you play. My dad's got season tickets." He's like, "I think you should go back to your seat right now, Joey. Right, Clarence?" He's like, "Nah, he's over. He's not bothering anyone. Let him stay here." And he says, "But just remember, my name is Roger Murdoch. I'm an airline pilot." He's like, Joey's like, "I think you're the greatest, but my dad says you don't work hard enough on defense." And he says that a lot of times you don't even run down court, and then you don't really try except during the playoffs. And then this is where he lets loose. He's like, "The hell I don't." He's like, "Listen, kid, I've been hearing the crap ever since I was at UCLA. I'm out here busting my buns every night. Tell your old man to drag Walton and Lanier up there down the court for 48 minutes. I was like, it was random ass shit. And he was like, "Hey, you're Kareem Abdul-Jabbar." It's like, okay, well, thank you for letting me know who I am. No, I'm Roger Murdoch.
Yeah. So the initial pilot is Over. That's Oveur. So Roger is the other guy. So when they go Roger Over,
Yeah, I know.
so that's one of the bits that they kind of do. But there, that little kid that's talking to Roger,
Yeah.
Over has kind of these like creepy moments throughout the movie where he's like talking to Joey, and he's like, "Have you ever been in a cockpit before?" And he's like, "No, I've never been in a plane before." And he's like, "You ever seen a grown man naked?" Like, it's just weird conversations. Like, "Do you like movies about gladiators?" Like, and Joey, have you ever been to a Turkish Persian? Like, seriously.
Like,
This is
why are you
the
asking the
weirdest-
questions right now?
This is like the weirdest, like,
Seems like the weirdest fucking back and forth shit like
Yeah.
you've ever seen. I love how it says, so Steve McCroskey, real quick. I love how it's like, looks like I picked the wrong week to quit smoking. You know, and like it looks like the wrong
these
week to
happen.
quit
These
drinking.
happen throughout the whole like the course of the movie. Like he says these at different times.
No, I just think it's funny.
Yeah.
It's like I picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue. You know.
So initially, he says like I picked the wrong week to quit smoking and then drinking, and then looks like I picked the wrong week to quit amphetamines, and he's taking a bunch of pills, and then
And he's
like the last one, he's like I picked the wrong week to stop sniffing glue, and he like literally is sniffing glue, and his hair's like all crazy.
It's like, really, what are we doing right now?
And you got to understand, like this movie came out in 1980, so like a lot of what we know today was different back then.
Well, again, and I understand, like,
Yeah.
you know, looking at the movie and looking at it, you know, some of like even the quotes here, it's like this was the kind of funniness that you would see, you know, like I would say now, what should be in a typical kind of like parody movie in some sort of way, you know, having the randomness, but also kind of having that like play on humor in a sense, and like that's where I feel like a lot of it was doing so well at that time. You know, like if you look, like I said, we look at nowadays. Good luck trying to find a fucking worthy ass film that's going to be even close to what half these movies are.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. I mean, a lot. I mean, Spaceballs, Airplane, Monty Python. I mean, they're just classic movies that if you tried to remake Airplane right now, it would not be the same movie.
No.
Especially like Spaceballs, like it would not be the same movie.
Instead of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I'd be like, "Hey, look, that's LeBron James," like, you know, or
Right.
something stupid like that. You know, like
I mean, it's not a parody movie. It's just a movie, but like they tried to do a second Space Jam, and the movie's not even close to being like what the original
you know,
one was.
I love how I bring up LeBron James and you mentioned Space Jam out of freaking clear blue. No, I mean I get it.
You know, I mean, Space Jam was like one of the like you look at like Looney Tunes with like what it was when it came out,
Oh, I agree. I mean, it was definitely.
and then they're like, "Hey, let's do another one."
I think the problem is like you take again a generational talent like that. You know, like I mean, granted, this is the first time Michael Jordan ever did a movie in general. Keep that in mind. So like you know, it was a different style. But then like okay, you bring in like Bill Murray, and you bring in I can't remember the other guy's name, but like you bring in those random actors like that, and it's like okay, you're trying to get the movie to you know kind of make sense in a sense. But like yeah, like the newer version of that movie, it's kind of yeah, it was a little weird. I mean, with Don Cheadle, like you know, playing the villain in a sense, and it's like, okay, but I mean, like, it's funny though that they brought back the original um, aliens from the first one though. That they did kind of have that kind of play on a little
Yeah,
bit, but yeah, no, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like some movies that they try to do like that, and they try to make it funny in a sense. Like, I always thought it was funny, even in the very first Space Jam when, you know, what was it, Bugs Bunny? All of a sudden, he like takes out like the microscope that they look at for like ears, and he's like looking at it, he's like, man, I see all the way through. Like, and you're like, wait a minute, he's like, how does that happen? But like, no, I mean, like, it was funny in that sense, but like, yeah, I would say like some of those movies now, like they try to remake in that like funniness, it doesn't always add up.
like I mean, ending here really quickly with
Yes,
probably
that's
just
true.
this last thought, but like, could you ever imagine them creating a brand new Monty Python group and
It
then doing like
it would be first of all,
a new set of like Holy Grail or Life of Brian movies?
it would be the only reason why I'm saying it like it would be very hard to do is because you'd have to make sure. Well, one, they'd all have to be British because if they weren't,
Well,
then
that's what I'm saying. Like
well, that's what I'm saying. They'd all have to be British, and they'd all have to be kind of like in that
the
same
the
kind of
humor would
funniness.
not be the same.
Well,
It would just be a different thing. Like you
Yeah.
cannot recreate what Monty Python has done without, you know,
really
if
destroying their reputation.
they could do a new Monty Python group, but they would have to do their own thing.
Right, and they can't do what they did back then, and even with Mel Brooks, like I mean, granted, they made part two of you know the history of the world and whatnot, but like it, and they even said like I didn't actually watch it. The problem is that it actually did so bad that it wasn't even worth people watching it because they
I
were like,
started watching it, but I mean, it was funny, but it wasn't like
it wasn't like the original.
it
Funny.
wasn't funny in the classic sense of this is like classic Mel Brooks funny.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're trying to like get that same hype from back in the day. And that's what I feel like a lot of problems like, and this is just even in general with movies is that, you look at, and I always like to bring this up because it's true, but like you look at Tron, it's a random movie like that, but then they bring, Tron Legacy, and then they try to
I
recreate
think
that
they're
same
trying to
legacy.
do a new one, but
But you know what you see what I'm saying though?
Yeah.
Like they try to like create that was like that popular thing back in the day, and then they try to do it nowadays, and it's like it's not the same hype as it was because it's not like okay. So when I think of like another random kind of funny movie, I'm thinking like Ace Ventura or just something random like that. Where you know what
Ace
I'm saying?
Ventura was one of my favorites.
No, but like
Yeah.
imagine trying to recreate that now.
Well, no, everything has to be woke now.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like you
Yeah.
couldn't, in some ways, you really couldn't recreate what Jim Carrey did. And like how he made that character in a
Right.
sense to be able to
Yeah.
do that. You can't do that now. Like, or you can't do it as it should have been. Like, if they're trying to recreate it, they have to do a whole new like setup, and they have to basically do their own thing, right? Because you can't recreate that same character all over again with Jim Carrey. It's not going to be the same, and it's just not going to be the
Yeah.
same hype as it used to be. Like that's what I'm saying with a lot of movies that they do now, whether it's parody or not. It's like you do realize like there's a reason why it did so well back then. Why do you think you don't need to recreate the wheel again by literally doing the same thing they did? You want to make it good? Do your own thing. Don't make it harder for yourself, you know.
Right.
But anyways, guys, we appreciate, you guys listening. We've been doing this what seems like a long time, but it really isn't. And I understand a year is still, it feels like a long time, Matt. I mean, we've been dedicated. And I mean, granted, yeah, there's been a couple times, sure, that we've been slacking, but I feel like for the most part, we've been trying to, like at least every time to like get you guys an episode every week.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, we'll admit it right now. Like we were debating on like even recording tonight, like it was hard, man.
Yeah.
And then, hopefully next week we can get a couple more, call it a day too. But, we appreciate you guys, make sure to follow us, make sure to subscribe, tell your buddies, tell that guy over in Walmart, man, come on now. I want you to like start spreading the word, man. Cause I'm telling you, two dudes, two different mics. It doesn't get any better than that. But anyways, guys, have a good night. Stay tuned next week. And until next time,
Stay geeky.